Spend 10 minutes once a week scrolling through your feed and notice what you stop on, what you click on, what gets your attention, and ask yourself the question, why did this make me stop? Well, hey there, and welcome back into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. Today, I want to share with you how to increase your engagement. A question we get asked so often is, how do I get more engagement on my social media? Because people are simply not commenting, they're not interacting, and therefore my social media isn't working. Well, first, I want to talk to you about what engagement truly is, because social media and its landscape has changed dramatically in the last few years, especially since the introduction of Reels. The behavior of your audience is very different to what it once was. So let's first talk about reach versus engagement. Now, while these two numbers may often go together, they also create a huge amount of confusion. Reach is simply the number of feeds that Facebook or Instagram have put your post on. So it's the number of people that have the potential to see the piece of content that you put out there. Engagement is when someone does something with that piece of content. So it's when someone comments, clicks on, shares, interacts in some way, shape, or form. Naturally, engagement is what we're all looking for, because with more engagement, we get more reach. Engagement is people walking with their fingers or voting with their fingers and telling the platform that they like this piece of content. Therefore, the platform learns from that and delivers more of that piece of content to more people. So typically, when you get more engagement, the reach goes up. Not always, but most of the time. So how do we increase our engagement, which will therefore hopefully also increase the number of times someone will see your posts in general in their feed, and therefore improve your social media visibility? Well, let's talk about that today. I'm going to share with you some strategies and some things that you can implement off the back of this podcast episode. Okay, so talking about engagement, I want to start with something very important. I said that the landscape has changed, and it has absolutely changed dramatically, like I said, since Reels came out, because people are behaving very differently now. What I mean by that is people are engaging less and less and less on social media, but it doesn't mean they're paying less attention. One of the things that I say a lot during our trainings is that just because people aren't interacting doesn't necessarily mean they're not watching. Now, to demonstrate this, I want you to stop and think about the last time you were scrolling through Reels on Facebook or Instagram. And don't tell me you haven't, because we all do it from time to time. But the last time you were scrolling through and you stopped and you watched a video and you had a little giggle, or you thought to yourself, that's really clever, did you comment or did you like that post? Now, the reason I bring this up is because the typical behavior now on social media, particularly when watching Reels, is for people to watch and absorb but not necessarily interact. And so we can no longer assume that interaction necessarily is a direct result of how well our post is performing. So there's also a flip side to that, and that is that we're seeing a lot more dark shares. Now, while that sounds sinister, it's not so sinister. It essentially means more and more people are taking content that they love and they're sharing it privately rather than publicly. So they're sharing it in Messenger, sending it through SMS, whatever it might be. Typically, Messenger is where we see that happening, and that is not getting reported. So what this means is that when you're looking at your insights and you're asking yourself the question, was this post useful? Did it work? Did it get good results? And you think to yourself, I had lots of reach, but nothing else happened. Does that mean it's a failure? You've got to ask yourself the question, could people have done something else with this post that I didn't see? So don't assume that just because people aren't engaging does not mean that they're not watching. With that being said, I'm going to help you pull them out of the woods today and get them interacting on more of your content. So let's talk about 5 quick, simple ways for you to do this. The first of those is to ask more questions. Good quality engagement questions are a super powerful way to increase the engagement on your page. Now, I'm a huge fan of engagement questions, so I'm going to quickly explain several reasons why these matter so much and why they're such a powerful piece of content, because it's not just about engagement itself. A good quality engagement question will do several things. Yes, it will increase the engagement on your page. But the second thing it will do is it will help you qualify your ideal customer and help you learn more about them. One of the things we talk about a lot is the importance of identifying and understanding your ideal customer. Because if Facebook and Instagram know so much about people that they're able to deliver the right content to them at the right times to get their attention, it's in your best interest to understand enough about them to put the right content out there for the platform to show them. In other words, you want to become experts at giving them content they care about, but that comes back to knowing who they are. Now, a good quality engagement question will give you a lot more insight into what makes them tick. So the things you want to be asking yourself really boil down to my two golden questions. Number one, what keeps them up at night, which means what problems in life do they want to solve, what bothers them and frustrates them. And number two is what gets them up in the morning, which means what do they value, what excites them, what do they care about, what conversations do they want to have, what are their interests. When you know the answer to those two questions, it makes creating content for them so much easier. And so ask yourself the question, what type of engagement questions could I ask on social media that would not only help me get engagement, but would help me answer some of those questions, the things I want to know about them, what keeps them up at night and what gets them up in the morning. The third reason that a good quality engagement question is so powerful is that it's also social and it takes the conversation for the most part offline. It allows you to connect with and converse with the people who are watching your social media content. At the end of the day, your social media is a way to drive people to a personal interaction. So you don't just want to be putting passive content out there that people consume. You also want them eventually at some point making a decision to connect with you and hopefully do business with you. So how do we get that to happen? If you get them out of the woodwork to connect, to interact, to answer a quality question, it's a great way to start a dialogue. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to jump straight into the sale immediately, but it does mean that you're able to start to get to know them better, tie the product or the business opportunity in with their lifestyle and what you now know about them, and have a real and relatable conversation. So an engagement question does lots of different things, but obviously it can help you build your engagement. So that's number one. Number two is to create eye-catching visuals. Now, I want to be clear with something here. I'm not saying perfect visuals, and this is where I think so many people get it so wrong. People are so ready to put the perfect version of themselves out there, the edited version of themselves out there. But let's face it, that's not real anymore. And on top of that, we've got the whole world of AI, which means we've got to ask the question, what's true anymore? What do we know is real? And the answer is we don't. So putting less perfect content out there in some ways is so much better. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do this, but I have seen people put content out there that was deliberately flawed with the purpose of getting attention. So, what I mean by eye-catching visuals isn't perfect. It's putting content out there that stops the scroll, that makes it it's a pattern interrupt. So things like doing fun or good before and after photographs, things that get people's attention really quickly. It could be black and white. Black and white is another really great way to get someone's attention because it's a pattern interrupt as they're scrolling through this very colorful feed of theirs. Movement, so video or even boomerang. If it's not complete movement, just a little bit can sometimes be enough. Using that good old quality 3D photograph, that feature in Facebook as well, does the same sort of thing. It creates a tiny element of movement as they're scrolling through their feed. Even things like putting a sepia or similar filter on your image that makes it look a little different. Now, again, I'm a little bit hesitant here with suggesting that you put lots of filters on your images. I don't love filters, but what I am saying is you can create something a little bit different using some of the amazing free tools that we have, including your very own camera on your phone, and do something just a little bit different that just stops people in their tracks and gets them to pay attention. I've also seen people get super creative with this and doing things like zooming right in on something so people don't actually know what it is until they really stop and focus on it. So again, have some fun with this, but think outside the square. Perfect isn't perfect, and it's not necessarily going to get you better views. Another thing that you can do as well to increase your engagement is to think about when are people available to engage. So, posting at optimal times. Now, this is something that really does require pre planning. And if you are one of those post on the fly people, you're probably going to struggle with this one. So, I'm going to give you a suggestion as we keep moving on, and that is to schedule ahead of time. I suggest that you sit down once a week to plan out your content. Reason being is you're going to do several things really well. First is you're going to be thinking strategically. Who's my audience? What do they care about? And how do I show up in their feed? So you'll be thinking about your posting strategy as a whole instead of randomly, oh, I've got a photograph, I'll put that up. That is just throwing stuff at the wall and waiting for something to stick. And I promise you, you will fail miserably if that's the way you attack your social media if you haven't figured out how to connect with them yet. So, post at optimal times, but I'm also going to throw a spanner in the works here. It's not just about posting at optimal times, it's also about getting to know what they care about at those times. Now, I'm going to give you an example here. I wrote a blog post. I've told this story many times. I'm going to tell it again because I really think it's a good example of this. But I wrote a blog post about 5 years ago. The blog post was actually about a very tongue-in-cheek blog post titled How to Be a Super Mum in 7 Easy Steps. Now, let me point something out to you. I am no super mum. And the reason I wrote this blog post was because I wanted to identify with my audience, that's you, lots of other mums in business out there, and talk about all the things I get wrong every day and how supermum is actually just a dirty word that people throw around that makes everyone feel inadequate, right? And so I wrote this really funny, tongue in cheek blog post, and I knew that my audience would resonate well with it because it was me just being super real and sharing what I knew everyone else goes through. So I wrote the blog post and I put it up on my socials at the time that Facebook said was my optimum posting time, which your Facebook insights will tell you. So for me, it was between 7 and 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night at that time. I put the blog post up and I sat there and I waited for it to do really well. And it did nothing. It completely flatlined. In fact, I didn't get a single view for about 2 hours. And even then, I think it was a family member. And so I thought, what happened? And I stopped and I really thought about it and I realized something. It wasn't about the time that I put the post up, it was about what my mummy friends were doing at that time. They were sitting on the couch if they had got through what we call witching hour here in Australia, which is the bath, dinner, bedtime routine, the crazy, routine after we get home from work. Once they've done that, what do? They sit on the couch and they are zoning out. They're tired and they're winding down from the day. They are not wanting to sit there and read a great big long blog post. So I thought to myself, all right, as a mum myself, when would I be most likely to want to read something like this? Probably in the morning when I get up over my morning coffee before the day starts and all the craziness unfolds. So I put exactly the same post up to test the theory the following week, but this time I did it on a Wednesday morning at 6:15 a.m. So I put the post up and I waited to see what happened. And the post went viral. It went crazy. It had thousands of views within a few days, and people were clicking on it, reading it, sharing it, and sending me messages and thanking me for being so fun and real and relatable. The point is, it wasn't about the quality of the post. It was about the time I was putting the post up. So sometimes you've got to stop and think to yourself about, okay, Facebook's telling me when they're on Facebook, but what are they actually doing on Facebook right now? And why are they using the platform? So posting at optimal times also will be your friend if you can tap into this and use it effectively for you and your audience. The next one is leveraging Facebook stories or Instagram. Remembering that stories get the best real estate on your platform. They're right at the top. They're the first thing that people see. And so using stories effectively is a brilliant way of getting hold of people not once, but twice. So they can see you in their feed, but also across the top. So, stories are a brilliant way of sharing daily updates, tips, even sneak peeks for upcoming products and various different things that are happening along the way, creating curiosity and intrigue, and most importantly, getting engagement because you can use things like the poll or the questions feature. So don't ignore those tools in your stories because they're there as well to get engagement. And remember as well, when someone interacts with a story, it goes directly to your messenger. So it's a brilliant way to get interaction with someone personally very, very quickly. Next up is number 5, the last tip I've got for you before I give you a few implementation things that you can do to really help you with all of these tips. So, number 5 is engaging with comments. Now, one of the things that you've got to avoid doing is posting and ghosting, yet we see people doing it all the time where they put a post up and walk away, put a post up, walk away. Now, that isn't social media, that's broadcasting. That's here's what I want you to hear, and I'm leaving the room. You wouldn't make an announcement then walk straight out of the room, would you? Well, no, you want to stay in the room and interact with people. So, it doesn't mean you have to be on social media all of the time, but what I'm saying is show up every now and again for a few minutes, check the comments, and interact back with them. Like the comment and say something back. Either thank them for their comment or just interact back appropriately. And where appropriate, ask another question and keep that interaction going. Facebook favors what we call conversational posts, which are posts where there's this backwards and forwards that goes on. So the more you can get that happening, the more you can get people interacting, the better it's going to be for your future reach of your posts. So getting the comments happening, really powerful. Now, I'm going to add a little bonus tip in there as well, and that is where and when you can get out of your own profile and page as well. Remembering that when you comment on someone else's post, your profile or your page goes with that. So other people see your name, they see that you commented. So it's a really great way to network outside of your existing profile and page as well. Show up and be present in other people's feeds. And by the way, it's more likely to drive them back to your feed as well and remind them that you exist. So socialize and network outside of your page. I'm not saying go and sell outside of your page. I'm saying interact. Just interact with people because it's going to boost your presence, remind people that you're there, and of course, it's the law of reciprocity. If you want people commenting on your stuff, you kind of need to be doing the same thing as well. So, a couple of really quick tips to help you implement all of this. The first thing is to create a content calendar. Now, with this episode, to help you with this, I've got a special little gift I want to give you, which is my very own content calendar or social media strategy planner. It's got several different downloads that are going to help you with this process so you can plan out the content that you're going to create, but it's also got some little tutorials to go with it as well. So I'm going to give that one to you. I'll put it in the show notes so you can download that and use it. And I promise you it's super, super game changing. The next one is to utilize your analytics. Pay attention to what they're telling you. Now, I have just indicated that some of this information without applying your own human knowledge is not necessarily going to be helpful, such as the best time of day to post. You still need to apply what you know about your audience as well, but it's going to give you useful information that you may not have otherwise paid attention to. But looking at what your posts are doing, how they're performing, how people are voting with their clicks, voting with their fingers. Look at what's working and what's not. A lot of people completely ignore their Facebook insights, and that would be a big mistake to make because there is so much information right there to help you improve what you're doing. Next up, develop some visual content, some fun, different content using the tools that you have at your fingertips. Play with the tools that you have in your photo editor on your phone. Use tools like Canva, etc. And if you happen to be in our memberships, you've also got Oxano Social, an amazing visual content designer tool. So play around with your content and come up with some various different ideas and things. I'm going to give you another little hot tip here. You ready? This is my personal hot tip for creating great quality content. Spend 10 minutes once a week scrolling through your feed and notice what you stop on, what you click on, what gets your attention, and ask yourself the question, why did this make me stop? You will get so much inspiration from doing that. So many images that you'll see and you'll think, I know how I can utilize a similar technique here to create a new image I haven't created before. Or look at the text and the caption and pay attention to why that might have got your attention. Are they using buzzwords? Are they using emojis in a clever way? Again, ask yourself, how do I recreate something like this that works for me and my target audience? What can I play with here? Remembering everything needs to be tested. So don't assume that just because it worked for someone else, it will instantly work for you. But you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's already been built. So why not use tools and techniques that are already out there and already being used? Okay. So develop some visual content, create it ahead of time. I love to save a little gallery of my images ready to use so that when I sit down to create my social media strategy each week, I've got a bundle of images ready to roll and play with. So I suggest creating it ahead of time to make your life a lot easier in that way. Also, make sure that you are actively engaging. Now, it's a good idea to allocate time in your calendar for this because 2 reasons. Number one, if it's not in your calendar, it doesn't happen. But second of all, it can really suck up your time. I have spent hours and hours and hours of getting sucked into the rabbit hole that is social media if I don't time myself when I do this exercise. So here's my suggestion to you. In order to do some interacting and commenting on other people's posts, set yourself a little 10, 15-minute timer once a day. Do it when you're having your morning coffee or something like that, or your lunch, and just spend that time going through and interacting with people, commenting on posts, making observations, getting social on social media. Okay, don't get caught up watching all the reels, by the way. Make sure that it's productive time, but time yourself. Set a timer and stick to it, because when you do that, you will naturally become a lot more productive and you'll get a lot more done. Okay, so that's my 5 steps to increase your engagement on social media. I hope that this has been super helpful for you today. And remember what I always say, after any training that you ever do, any podcast that you ever listen to, any book that you ever read, any time that you sit down to do any development or learning, make sure you take one thing away from that learning that you are going to implement to get you results. Because it's not the knowledge that you gain that gets you the growth. It's the knowledge you implement that gets you the growth. So think of one thing you're going to do. You're going to finish this podcast episode right now. You're going to go and you're going to implement one thing. What's that one thing going to be for you right now? And of course, if you've loved this episode and it's been super helpful for you, I'd love to ask you to do 2 little favors for me. First of all, I'd love for you to share this with a friend. We're here to help grow people in this industry, help inspire them to be everything that they are capable of being. So if you've loved this episode and you think there's someone else that might benefit from listening to it as well, it might give them some hot little tips to help them grow on social media, please share it. But also make sure that you subscribe, because we want to catch you again next week with another powerful episode to help you grow your business. But that's it from me today. God bless. It's been so great catching up with you again. We'll see you in the podcast next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.